Hello and welcome to the Hot Corner, the all-baseball themed show here on LTV. The way this show works is that there are 3 different timed segments where our analysts will be discussing and debating different topics and questions. I'm your host, Alec Zucker, and I'm joined here today by Mr. Joe Caputo and Mr. Brandon Magown. Guys, how you doing today?
Great. Great to be back.
Yeah, you ready for a great show?
Yes.
All right. Well, let's get to it. We have our first question coming up. Well, let's actually, before we do that, let's talk about the rules. Each analyst will have 45 seconds to discuss each question given, after which the floor will be open for a minute and a half for discussion and rebuttal. So, guys, the first question will be, with his struggles with left-handed pitching, do you agree with talks that Ryan Howard should become a platoon player?
I say yes. And I was looking at his stats the last 3 years, and of course there's smaller sample sizes the last 2 years because he's been injured. But last year he had 81 at-bats against left-handed pitchers, and he struck out 44% of those at-bats. I mean, that right there, without even going back to 2012 and 2011, that right there should raise a red flag.
Well, I mean, I agree, but you can't make him a platoon player.
Why not?
I mean,
well, remember, Joe, you have 45 seconds. So
I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, all right, so I'll go back to 2012 as well. He struck out 42% of his 98 at-bats against left-handed pitching. And in 2011, he batted .224 against left-handed pitching.
Well, let me say now. He's making, for the next 3 seasons, $25 million. You can't make a guy with making that kind of money a platoon player. Even if he hits 0 against left-handed hitters, you throw him out there every day because he is your first baseman. Sure, when you gave him this contract, he wasn't hitting that poorly against left-handed pitching, but you have to stick him out there, keep giving those at-bats, and hopefully eventually he'll turn it around, I mean, he hasn't had, like you said, a small sample size. He hasn't had a good season in the past 2 years. He's been injured. So I think with a full season ahead of him, with a good spring, I think maybe those numbers will go up a little bit. I don't think he'll ever hit 300 against lefties, but I think he'll do decent enough to be able to keep himself in that lineup.
All right, guys, minute and a half.
You're a Philly fan.
Yeah, right? I am. So I'm a little biased.
As a Philly fan, do you care that he's getting paid $25 million, or do you care that the Phillies get wins?
Well, I mean, I do. A little bit of both. I mean,
you have to look at results here.
Yes.
You can't be looking at, just because we made a mistake in the past by paying him $25 million, now we're forced to pay him. I mean, when an NBA team signs a guy that absolutely falls off the face of the earth, they keep playing him? No, they sit him down, they cut him. The same thing happened with Kei Igawa. Remember Kei Igawa that came over from Japan for the Yankees?
He wasn't making 25 a year.
He was making a lot of money, though, and they set him down.
But also a pitcher. That's a little different. I mean, with Ryan Howard, you can't destroy his confidence like this. I know he's not a young player, so it's not going to affect him too much. But I just think that you have to let him get those at bats and hopefully, turn it around versus lefties. Also, I don't think that with you put Darren Ruff, who is the guy there, he hasn't proven himself yet.
They don't have, and that's the only problem that I do have with this. The way the Phillies are made up right now. I was looking at Ruff's numbers against lefties, and they're almost just as bad, which is inexcusable because he's a righty. But the Phillies should have done a better job of forming a team that they could actually use to maybe make Ryan Howard a platoon player. But this is a 3-year thing going on. I mean, this isn't something that happened last year that you're going to have to give him another chance. I mean, he's had 3 years to prove that he can hit lefties, and he hasn't done it.
No, I definitely agree. But, last point, another reason why he won't ever become a platoon player is because Ruben Amaro is sticking with the past, and he's going to leave all these old guys in the lineup.
He's also a fan favorite, too, and to see him coming off the bench for games against lefties would be tough to swallow. And if the Phillies don't have a better option, what are you going to do? You just have to hope he straightens himself out. All right, great topic, guys. We're going to move on to our next question, question 2. Guys, how big of a loss is it for the Mariners that all-star pitcher Iwakuma and top pitching prospect Magown Walker will most likely not be ready come opening day? Brandon, we're going to start with you this time. 45 seconds.
All right. It's definitely not the start that the Mariners wanted coming into the season. Obviously, after re-signing, after signing Cano, they're hoping to be a contender this year. But I don't think it's that detrimental to the Mariners because, Magown Walker has only had 3 starts in the majors. Yeah, he's their top pitching prospect, I think #1 overall draft pick, I think 2010 or a few years ago. But, he really hasn't proven himself just yet to be super valuable to the rotation. With Iwakuma, it's a little different. He might, his presence might be missed a little more. But I think because the injury happened so early on, in spring training, that these other pitchers can now have so much time to get ready and prepare, so they can be ready come opening day, so they're not just thrown in there into the starting rotation.
I think it's huge. I mean, you look at this Mariners staff, and they've put together a decent lineup, but for the past few years, the problem's been always Felix Hernandez and then who?
Yeah.
And last year, Iwakuma had a phenomenal year. He was 18th in the MLB in pitchers' WAR, which is pretty good. He was 14-6, 2.66 ERA. And now you're looking at a guy, Erasmo Ramirez is your number 2 starter.
Wow. He's their number 2.
Ramirez. Yes. And when you're looking at at the Mariners rotation right now, it doesn't matter that you got Robinson Cano. As we've seen from the Los Angeles Angels last year, they get Josh Hamilton, they have Mike Trout, they have Albert Pujols, and they were terrible because of their pitching. So I think this is a huge loss for the Mariners.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's still Irvin Santana is still in the market. I know there has been some talks.
He still hasn't been signed yet.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks. Wow, he'll be signed eventually.
And so I think now with the pressure being on the Mariners to fill a rotation that's already had questions going in even before these injuries, I think they make a little bit more of a push now. Maybe sign Santana and fill that gap.
They need to do something.
They do,
because they can't go in. You can't go into the season with Erasmo Ramirez being your number 2 starter.
But I don't think he's going to be the number 2 starter for long. I mean, these injuries, from what I read, shouldn't silence these guys for too long. Mid-April, maybe at the worst, the end of April. I mean, they're behind. It was Iwakuma with the finger. He has his finger in a splint, and then Taijuan Walker with his shoulder.
Shoulder injuries are scary.
Yeah, but they just said it was inflammation, so it wasn't huge.
That's what they said about Michael Pineda.
Well, listen, that's true. And we've had that discussion many times. I want to ask you guys, let's say, best case scenario, they do come back middle towards the end of April. They don't miss too much time. Is this team a contender with the addition of Cano, with Iwakuma healthy, with Felix there? What do you think, Joe?
A lot has to fall into place, but it wouldn't surprise me if they contended this year. I mean, Cano, Seager, a very good middle of the order there, and as I said, Iwakuma is one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball.
I agree.
And him and Felix at the top is one of the best 1-2s you're going to get.
Yeah.
So, I'd say yes.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not the start they want to get off to, but I think once they get these 2 pitchers back, and if Taijuan Walker proves that he can, be a solid pitcher, I do think they can compete, a little bit at least.
Right. Sounds good. It's a tough division when you got the Angels, you got the A's, you got the Rangers, but we'll see if they have enough offense.
Watch the Rangers this year. Watch the Rangers.
We'll see. Should be interesting. All right, well, finally, guys, it's time for the final question of this opening segment. So even though it isn't a question for this upcoming season, it is a good question to discuss. One of the last 4 NL Rookie of the Year award winners, you had Buster Posey in 2010, Craig Kimbrell in 2011, Bryce Harper in 2012, and Jose Fernandez in 2013. Guys, who would you say will have the best career when it's all said and done out of those 4 guys? Joe?
I'm going to go Jose Fernandez. I mean, this guy came up last year. He was 20 years old when he came up, 21 now. He had one of the most remarkable years for I mean, he's on the Marlins as well, just to remind you. 12-6, 2.19 ERA, 9.75 strikeout per 9.
Very under the radar.
Yes, extremely under the radar. And this guy kind of reminds me a lot of Felix Hernandez, who we were just talking about. I call him Felix Hernandez 2.0, but I think he may actually end up being better than Felix Hernandez, and the reason because he keeps the ball on the ground, which is key, as I've been talking about on my times on the show. 1.36 ground ball to fly ball ratio, and when you keep the ball on the ground, you are going to prevent a lot of home runs.
And you get double plays.
And you get double plays. And this guy, he's legit around 94, 95. He's got a good career ahead of him.
Well, I'm going to go with Buster Posey. Now, I know he has a little bit of a head start in some of these guys, but for those 3 years so far in the league, 3 to 4, I mean, he already has so much hardware. He's a 2-time World Series champion, an MVP, Rookie of the Year, and an NL batting champion. I mean, he is so good, and he's had to do that after coming back from a horrific injury. I mean, that just shows what kind of a player he is. He didn't let that scare him. I know they kind of moved him away from blocking the plate, but now with the new rule, it's not really going to matter much. But he is just such a competitor to come back and to have an MVP season so shortly after that injury. And I know that last year he kind of, he doesn't want to admit they maybe got tired towards the end of the year last year and didn't have the numbers, finish out. But he came into this season with 10 pounds of muscle more.
I got to agree with Brandon. I mean, Buster Posey, he's already a superstar. He's already won 2 championships. He's still young. He's easily the best pitcher in baseball.
The thing is, I think the two that we picked are the two that you're because
absolutely
pitcher and catcher are I think two of the most important positions in all of baseball.
Probably the most important. Right?
You need that battery to really propel your team to be great. And having a top flight pitcher in Fernandez, which is why I picked him. I mean, he's not one of these guys that just came up and he had a solid first year and you're going to just see what happens in the future. I mean, this guy was dominant.
Yeah, it was remarkable
as a 21-year-old rookie.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I have a lot of confidence in him going forward. But I mean, Buster Posey, I know he's already proven, and the debate here isn't. I mean, who's proven? It's who's going to do better in the future. So.
No, he's also, he's the face of the Giants. I would say at the age of 26, his best years are still to come, which is scary. He's so young. How much more can he do? And if he stays healthy, and they can also move him, maybe to first base at the end of his career to save him, a little bit of time there. But I just think if he keeps, putting up these numbers and staying dedicated in the offseason. Adding 10 pounds of muscle to come in and just hopefully not tire out at the end of the year.
Certainly help his power numbers too, which were down last
Definitely.
year.
And he's in such a huge ballpark. And he's putting up kind of numbers like this. It's remarkable.
They have a new stat they're coming out with for catchers. Catchers who frame balls and how many runs they save. Buster Posey, very valuable.
How do you judge that though, real quick here?
I personally have not gotten into the details yet, but I saw
it's a sabermetrician's dream.
It's a new stat coming out. Yeah.
Interesting. All right, well, that will wrap up our first segment, guys. After the break, we'll jump into our rapid fire segment. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Hot Corner. Let's get back to it. It's time now for our rapid fire segment. I will ask each analyst a different question, and they will have 30 seconds to discuss it. Our first question now is for you, Brandon. Who will we see this year? The May or June Domonic Brown or second half Domonic Brown?
I think it's going to be, kind of right down the middle. I mean, to have those numbers that he had in the month of May and maybe the first week of June, to keep that all season is kind of unrealistic, especially for such a young player like Domonic Brown. But I hope and I don't think he'll have such a drop off like he did in that second half. I know he ended the season kind of hurt, but I think this spring will be a good indication of how well he'll do. And I just think he'll have a somewhat successful season, especially after having somewhat last year. It takes a little bit of the pressure off. And I think he'll maybe hit, somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 home runs. Hopefully 20 will be all right with me, but I think he'll have a decent season.
I'd agree. I think he's young, so you got to give him a little slack.
I hope so. I'm thinking about keeping him for my fantasy team. I hope he does well, but we'll see. All right, let's move on to our next rapid fire question. Joe, with the additions of Ricky Nolasco, Phil Hughes, your boy, and Mike Pelfrey, will the Twins be competitive this year?
Come on. Really?
I'm glad you said that. Well, if you'd said yes,
the Twins are not going to contend this year. And I did a little math prior to the show. The combined WAR of Hughes, Pelfrey, and Nolasco
is it under 0?
6.4. Okay. The WAR of Max Scherzer last year, 6.4. So Max Scherzer is equivalent to the 3 starters that the Twins, the top 3 starters the Twins will be throwing out there. And the reason I've compared to Max Scherzer is because they're in the same division. So you have to compete with him. You have to compete with the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Rangers, the A's, the Indians.
It's just
all these teams. Yeah. The AL is loaded. No, Twins are not going to contend.
Yeah, I'd say I agree.
All right, we're in agreement on the second of 2 questions. All right. So, Brandon, was it right for Robinson Cano to come out and say that the Mariners need one more bat and that they should have signed Nelson Cruz as well as Ubaldo Jimenez?
No, absolutely not. I mean, he just signed this 10-year, $240 million contract. When you sign that kind of a contract, you can't come out and say, oh, we need more guys now. When you take that kind of money, you can't expect the team to just have, more money to go out and sign all these other big players. And for him to say we need one more at bat, okay, I understand he said maybe a righty bat in a lefty heavy lineup, but that's kind of a slap in the face, I think, to the rest of his team, especially they're all young. He's supposed to be a leader there, give them confidence. I think it was wrong for him to come out and say that they needed more people to compete.
You think he's having some regrets about going to Seattle? I mean,
maybe a little bit.
He sees the lineup.
He's going to have a lot of
Where's all my protection?
$240 million. I mean, he took $60 million more to go there.
He hasn't even played a game yet. He thinks he's now, the face. I don't.
Well,
think that's right.
I think he's right, but he's certainly not right for coming out and saying it. Not him, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question is for Joe. Will this finally be the year that Mike Trout wins an MVP?
I really wish it was up to me. I've said that
he won the last 2 years.
He should have won the last 2 years. Yeah. So really, the bottom line here is is Cabrera going to decline enough where the voters stop voting for him? And the answer there may be no, but I think talent-wise and type of season-wise, I think, yes, this is the year Mike Trout will finally win MVP. He's not going to decline whatsoever this year. And Miguel Cabrera, we saw last year, wearing down a bit, getting injured. We may see Mike Trout finally take home his first.
What about the move to first base, though, for Cabrera?
That'll help. It'll also help his defensive numbers, probably,
Absolutely.
because he's not going to have as many opportunities at third. But he's getting a little older now.
He's over, was he 32, 31?
Yeah, and he's a big guy, you know. He's probably going to start laboring eventually. But, I mean, he's been great. I'm not going to debate
I too
that.
hope Mike Trout wins MVP this year.
He should.
I'm going to say I think he does too, but Cabrera has to come down a little bit. I think he needs to just get a little bit better. We'll see. I know it's a lot to ask for, but all right. So, Brandon, your last question is the fifth question on our list. Will Ryan Braun finally have a distraction-free season, and will he be productive?
I don't think it's going to be completely distraction-free, at least not at first. You know, already in this spring training, I've heard fans yelling MVPED, you know. But I think if he performs, you know, at least a little bit, I think a lot of those questions and attention comes off of him. I think maybe after the first month, 2 months at max, I think we kind of lose the interest in the whole Ryan Braun thing. But I think he will be, you know, somewhat productive. I mean, he had a home run in his first spring training at bat, you know, so that's got to be a good sign.
Small sample size.
Yeah, I mean, one at that, but very true. But I think it'll be somewhat distraction-free, at least, you know, going forward, and I think he will produce this year.
You got to remember they play in Milwaukee, so you're not going to get as much media coverage there.
Imagine if he was a Yankee.
Yeah, that would be
A-Rod type.
I mean, look at A-Rod.
Probably
yeah.
worse than A-Rod. He lied. Well, they both lied. So we think. Okay, our final question for the rapid fire segment. It's for Joe. Will Curtis Granderson, who just signed with the New York Mets, ever hit 30 to 40 home runs again?
This question was extremely difficult, the most difficult of all the questions. I went back, average home run distance his past 3 years, 383, 389, and 395. And I made this chart that you're going to see on the screen right now. This is his home runs at City. His home runs in 2000, I believe it was 11, and then the overlay of Citi Field's layout. We all know Citi Field, one of the biggest stadiums in baseball. I think Granderson gets 30. But I think it might only happen one more time. His fly ball rate jumped in his last season with the Tigers to 49%. He's uppercutting a lot more now. He's striking out a lot more because of it. But I think Granderson does get 30 based on this chart and based on the way his trends have been going.
Okay, Brandon.
Maybe 30, but I don't see that.
I think he'll be right around there too. It's good. It's good place.
He hit 30 home runs in his last year with the Tigers. And that's in Comerica, which is another huge park. So I think he might get it one more time. He's got to stay healthy, though. He wasn't healthy last year.
Yeah. All right, well, sounds good. Great segue, guys. That will do it for Rapid Fire. We'll be right back with much more, including our closing segments right after this break. Welcome back. It's time now for our last segment, Speak Now. Both of our analysts, we each have a minute to discuss something from earlier in the show or to bring up a topic to discuss quickly. Could be anything, really. Joe, we'll start with you.
I want to go back. We were talking about a little bit when we were talking about the Twins, but I want to talk about the AL playoff race, and specifically the Yankees and the Rangers, who I think are the two most improved teams from last year. The Yankees adding Masahiro Tanaka was one of the best signings in the offseason this year, but remember, you're getting Michael Pineda back as well, so you're looking at a pitching staff that, top to bottom, could end up being the best pitching staff in baseball. And then you look at the Rangers. Adding Shin-Soo Choo is a huge signing. They traded Kinsler for Fielder to free up second base for Jurickson Profar. I think the Rangers are dangerous as well. Only thing that concerns me, Holland with his injury is going to be out for a while, but they will get Harrison back, hopefully. So maybe there's a little trade-off there. And I mean, Yu Darvish also is one of the best pitchers in baseball. So I'm looking at the Rangers and the Yankees in the AL playoff race to really make huge strides towards making the World Series this year.
Do you think the Red Sox can get back?
I'm going to say no.
No,
I'm going to say no.
I think it's funny you brought up Pineda before bringing Mark Teixeira up. I mean,
okay, and that's the thing. I think the big concern is the infield for the Yankees. Between Jeter and Teixeira, huge injury problems there, and then who knows who's going to play second and third. It looks like Roberts and Kelly Johnson right now. Eduardo Nunez has to step up and play well.
Maybe you'd say that for the last 4 years.
No, you lost Robinson Cano now, so.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go off of that. I even though the Yankees spent close to $500 million, and the last time they did that, they ended up winning the World Series. But they're almost as old as the Phillies. I mean, well, especially in their infield. I mean, their youngest guy now is Brian McCann. You know, can a team that old, even when you have that much money into it, can they compete? I mean, we don't know what Cheater's gonna give you. And like you said, with the hole at second base now, if it's Kelly Johnson or whoever else going to fill in, is the production going to be there? I mean,
it kills me to say this, but Brett Gardner might be on the move. I know they just signed him to an extension, but that could actually add value to him. If a team's looking to get him, they no longer have to worry about an expiring contract. They're in danger of getting a major injury, whether it's to Teixeira, to Jeter, to Ellsbury. Someone, if it was to Ellsbury, that would be fine because that Gardner would fill right in. But if it was to one of their infielders, that would be crippling for them, especially Teixeira. They need Teixeira a lot.
I think he was their biggest loss.
He's the most important part of that offense. That he's the key to that offense. He's going to be hitting in the middle of that order. They need him to perform.
That was a very long minute, but we're going to move on.
I think it was a combined minute. So
okay.
So 2 minutes.
Yeah.
2 minutes. All right. Well, Brandon, we'll give you another minute to discuss what you want to talk about.
Okay. Well, I'll go back real quick then and talk about was our third question on the first segment about who's going to have a greater end of the career. I think it would, if anybody else, not Buster Posey, Jose Fernandez, I think it would be Craig Kimbrell. You know, he's a closer. And you know, sometimes closers don't get the respect they deserve, but I think he is now the best closer in baseball. You know, I think he probably won't surpass Mariano Rivera's saves record, but I think he'll be contending to have such a good career as Mariano Rivera.
Strong words.
But he's so dominant so early in his closing career.
You have to remember
he relies on velocity.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was just going to say.
When that velocity goes, he throws it straight.
I mean, Mariano Rivera was a dominant
Farnsworth.
Pitcher that didn't have to throw 97, 98 to be dominant.
But he developed his cutter late though. I mean, did Rivera.
So. Well, it got better late, but he had it all the time, and that helped him transition to the stage in his career where he was only throwing 91, 92. I mean, you saw him last year; he was cracking 90 that much. I think you're putting Bryce Harper fourth on the list.
I mean, I think Bryce Harper.
I think we're forgetting how dominant Bryce Harper could be. I mean, he was considered the best prospect in baseball before Mike Trout took over.
Yeah.
Bryce Harper is very, very good. I'm still keeping him above Kimbrel.
Really? Yeah. I don't know. I think sometimes he might be a little overrated, but he's still a great player. I'm not saying he's not, but I just think sometimes.
Joe, I'm surprised you're not putting Koji above Kimbrel. You love Koji.
The thing with, you got to see more from Koji, but no, last year Koji was the best closer,
especially down the stretch.
I agree with that.
All right, any last words, guys, before we get out of here?
No.
It should be a great season.
It really will.
It'll be really interesting.
It's definitely, with all the moves the Yankees have made.
Glad it's back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Me too.
So that will do it for this edition of the Hot Corner. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, if you're interested in joining LTV, like us on Facebook or email us at ltv@tcnj.edu. For Joe Caputo and Brandon McGowan, I'm Alec Zucker. Have a good one.